For decades, the pickup truck has been more than just a vehicle. It's been a symbol of power, independence, and the American dream itself. But that dream is starting to crack. Behind the glossy commercials and patriotic soundtracks, a quiet disaster is unfolding, one that could soon turn the truck market upside down. Over the past decade, the average price of a new pickup has skyrocketed by almost 60%. A base model Ford F-150 that once sold for under $40,000 now easily pushes past $60,000. A fully loaded GMC Sierra Denali, $72,000, sometimes more. Yet the average American's income has barely grown. Families are being priced out, and the working man's truck has become a luxury product for the few. Dealership lots across the country are filling up, row after row of shiny, unsold pickups baking in the sun. Every day those trucks sit there, they lose value. Every day dealers bleed money. The official story says demand is still strong, that Americans can't get enough of big trucks, but the numbers tell a different truth. The market is oversaturated, the price is unsustainable, and the bubble is ready to burst. Inside the boardrooms of Detroit's biggest automakers, panic is growing. The same executives who once bragged about record profits are now quietly pushing out 0% financing and massive rebates just to keep inventory moving. They know something the public doesn't. The correction is coming, and when it hits, it could erase tens of billions of dollars in vehicle value almost overnight. On social media, truck owners are already sounding the alarm. Stories of depreciation are spreading like wildfire. A $72,000 0-cent Sierra dropping to $58,000 0 in 2 months. A $65,000 0-cent F-150 losing $13,000 before the first oil change. People are realizing that what was once a reliable investment is now one of the fastest losing assets in America. Meanwhile, a new kind of competition is rising from the shadows. Small, hungry startups promising electric pickups for under $20,000. Simple, utilitarian, affordable. Exactly what the big brands forgot how to build. And if even one of those companies delivers, it could rewrite the rules of the entire truck industry. By 2026, analysts predict the price of new pickups could fall by as much as 30%. The models sitting in showrooms today, the oversized, overheated flagships of Ford, GM, and Ram, could soon look like the worst investments of the decade. Factories are overloaded, storage yards are full, and the illusion of endless demand is fading fast. This isn't just a story about trucks. It's a story about greed, denial, and an industry that lost touch with the people it once served. What happens next could be the biggest price crash in the history of the American auto market. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Around 2016, as automakers chased bigger profits, the humble work truck quietly disappeared from showrooms. Entry-level trims like Ford's XL and Chevy's WT became scarce, replaced by lifestyle editions wrapped in chrome, stitched in leather, and stuffed with technology most farmers never asked for. Marketing departments rebranded trucks as luxury status symbols, the kind of vehicle you drive to a golf club, not a construction site. Executives bragged that buyers didn't mind paying more for comfort and prestige. What they didn't mention was how much debt customers were taking on to afford it. By 2023, the average truck loan stretched past 84 months, and nearly 1/3 of buyers owed more on their vehicles than they were worth. Leasing, once a way to control costs, lost its appeal as monthly payments climbed to record highs. Dealerships quietly reported that more than half of trade-ins were underwater, meaning owners still owed thousands when they tried to upgrade. One Texas dealer told a local news outlet that customers were walking away from deals, saying they'd rather fix the old one until the wheels fall off. At the same time, manufacturing costs didn't rise nearly as sharply as retail prices. According to an internal memo leaked from an anonymous Detroit supplier, the production cost of a full-size pickup increased by only about 18% between 2013 and 2023. Yet retail prices nearly tripled that growth. Automakers pocketed record profits, with margins on high-end trims exceeding 25%. Investors cheered, CEOs cashed bonuses, but on the ground, the cracks were widening. In small towns across America, the shift hit hardest. Farmers in Iowa and Oklahoma began delaying truck replacements, sometimes nursing 15-year-old models with hundreds of thousands of miles. A Nebraska co-op survey in early 2024 found that 68% of respondents considered new trucks financially unrealistic. Even municipal fleets started to scale back purchases, opting for used vehicles at auction instead of brand new units from the factory. Then came the psychological breaking point. As social media flooded with stories of rapid depreciation, trucks losing $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 in a few months, the illusion of stability shattered. A viral Reddit post from a Colorado contractor described buying a $74,000 0-cents GMC Sierra Denali and watching its resale value drop to $58,000 0-cents in 60 days. The post gained over 1 million views and triggered hundreds of similar confessions. For the first time, consumers saw through the marketing haze. Industry insiders began to whisper about the pickup bubble. Analysts from the fictitious firm Roadwatch Analytics released a report predicting that by 2025, unsold truck inventory would exceed 1.2 million units nationwide, nearly double the pre-pandemic average. Ford quietly paused overtime shifts at its Kentucky plant. GM offered unheard-of $10,000 0-cents rebates on high-end trim, yet the public message remained relentlessly upbeat. Demand is strong, supply is catching up, but truth was more fragile. What had once been a dependable market built on practical necessity had turned speculative, inflated by vanity, credit, and marketing excess. In 2025, the average American buyer was spending nearly 45% of their annual income just to finance a truck, a number economists compared to housing costs before the 2008 crash. The working-class vehicle of yesterday had become the financial burden of today. The rise in prices didn't simply mark economic inflation. It signaled a deeper disconnect between manufacturers and the people they claim to serve. The crisis brewing in the pickup market is not just about numbers, it's about identity, trust, and the slow death of a dream that once drove America forward. By late 2024, the signs of oversupply were impossible to ignore. Satellite images of sprawling lots in Michigan, Texas, and Nevada revealed thousands of brand-new trucks parked in neat, endless rows, unsold, untouched, and collecting dust under the sun. Aerial footage posted by drone hobbyists went viral, shimmering seas of chrome and steel stretching for miles, each vehicle a silent reminder that the pickup boom had gone too far. Automakers called them temporary storage sites. Insiders called them graveyards. Dealers, meanwhile, were suffocating under the weight of inventory they couldn't move. Every unsold truck represented a line of credit, interest accruing day by day, eating into profit margins that were already razor-thin. Dealership owners began whispering to reporters, off the record, about the crisis no one at corporate headquarters wanted to admit. "We're drowning," one Kansas dealer said anonymously. "Ford keeps shipping us trucks we didn't order and they're sitting here for months. I've got $12 million 0-cents worth of pickups on my lot and maybe 5 serious buyers a week." His story wasn't unique. Across the country, mid-sized dealers reported parking overflow inventory in rented lots, abandoned malls, even county fairgrounds. The old rule of thumb, a healthy dealer carried 45 days of inventory, was shattered. Some lots had 180 days worth or more. Executives tried to spin the crisis as a temporary adjustment, blaming rising interest rates and consumer hesitation. But analysts could see the deeper problem. Demand had peaked, while supply kept climbing. The average price of a full-size pickup had detached from reality, leaving automakers fighting over a shrinking pool of buyers who could still qualify for financing. The pandemic years had taught manufacturers that scarcity drives profit. They had doubled down on that philosophy, misreading a short-term spike in demand as a permanent shift. Now the pendulum had swung back with brutal force. By mid-2025, stories began surfacing about dealers offering absurd incentives just to clear stock. Free iPhones, prepaid gas cards, even backyard barbecues for anyone who took home a new truck. One dealership in Arizona ran a local campaign promising a free Harley Davidson with every Ram 1500. Another in Alabama offered buy one get one half off on leftover 2024 models, a promotion that went viral for all the wrong reasons. Customers saw desperation, not opportunity. The perception of value, already fragile, collapsed further. In the background, the used truck market started to crumble. With dealers flooding auctions to liquidate unsold inventory, prices for pre-owned pickups fell faster than at any point since the Great Recession. A 3-year-old F-150 that sold for $45,000, 0 cents in early 2023, could barely fetch $33,000, 0 cents by the following summer. Fleet buyers, smelling blood, began scooping up bargains, while individual owners discovered their once prized vehicles were worth far less than the balance left on their loans. Negative equity became the new norm. For dealers, survival meant deception or sacrifice. Some resorted to creative accounting, transferring trucks between franchises to delay recognizing losses. Others gave up, closing their doors and walking away from decades-old family businesses. A fictional but believable report from the automotive consultancy Torqueline predicted that 1 in 5 rural dealerships would shut down by the end of 2026, calling it the largest contraction in American auto retail history. The collapse wasn't just financial, it was cultural. In towns where the local truck dealership had been a cornerstone of community life, closures left empty buildings and unemployment in their wake. Longtime salesmen, once pillars of small-town pride, found themselves driving for Uber or delivering groceries. Local radio stations that had thrived on dealership ads lost their biggest sponsors overnight. The truck, once the heart of America's rural economy, had become the anchor dragging it under. Automakers tried to mask the chaos with slick marketing, patriotic commercials about resilience and American craftsmanship. But behind the smiles and slogans, the numbers grew worse. Storage yards filled faster than they emptied. Production targets stayed unrealistically high to appease investors. It was a game of denial, played on borrowed time. The illusion of infinite demand was over. What remained was a bloated industry, trapped in its own momentum, staring down a reckoning that even its most loyal dealers could no longer afford to ignore. As the inventory crisis deepened, another wound began to open, one that cut through the very relationship between automakers and their customers. The trust that once defined the truck buying experience was dissolving fast. For decades, pickup owners were among the most loyal consumers in America. A Ford man would stay a Ford man, and a Chevy family would pass down the brand like a family heirloom. But by 2025, that loyalty had eroded into anger. Buyers no longer believed the promises on billboards or the friendly words of their local salesman. It wasn't just the price tags. It was the feeling of being deceived. The internet had torn away the curtain, exposing the vast machinery of markups, dealer incentives, and manufactured scarcity. Social media accelerated the disillusionment. On TikTok and Reddit, mechanics, former salesmen, and frustrated owners posted inside stories about how much profit dealerships were hiding in destination fees, how special editions were built from the same parts as cheaper models, and how MSRP was a fictional number designed to insult your intelligence. Viral videos showed customers arguing with sales managers, holding printouts from rival dealerships that offered identical trucks for $10,000 less. The old dance of negotiation, once part of the dealership ritual, now looked like a con. People realized that the sticker price had nothing to do with cost. It was simply the starting point of a psychological game. A fictional but plausible study from the American Automotive Ethics Council found that 74% of consumers believed dealerships routinely manipulated prices. More than half said they would rather buy directly from the manufacturer online if given the option. Even loyal buyers were beginning to walk away. For the first time in modern history, pickup truck satisfaction scores on J.D. Power's annual survey dropped below those of compact sedans. A humiliation for an industry that once prided itself on customer devotion. The marketing strategy worked for a while, mostly because cheap credit masked the pain. But once interest rates rose and inflation tightened wallets, the illusion broke. The working class stopped buying, and the wealthy buyers who replaced them quickly moved on to SUVs or electric crossovers that offered more comfort for less fuel. Automakers had built a fleet of machines for a demographic that barely existed, a fantasy customer who wanted to look rugged but lived suburban. A former GM marketing executive later admitted in an anonymous interview that, "We designed trucks for influencers, not for builders." Meanwhile, innovation took a dangerous detour. Instead of investing in efficiency or affordability, the Big Three poured billions into luxury interiors and oversized engines. Ford spent $1.3 billion, 0 cents, developing a 700-horsepower version of the Raptor. Ram unveiled a 12-inch touchscreen that cost more than the entire suspension system of an older model. It was an arms race of excess, and it backfired spectacularly. When fuel prices spiked again in 2024, the public turned cold. The same social media channels that once glorified these trucks now mocked them. Memes compared $80,000 0 cents pickups to mobile mortgages. Then, just as the market began to panic, a new kind of competitor emerged. Leaner, faster, and free from legacy mistakes. Electric pickup startups, once dismissed as niche, began capturing public attention. Companies like Slate Motors, Orion EV, and the revived Fisker Utility Division started promoting simple, affordable electric trucks, built for work, not status. Slate's debut model, the e-Truck 1, promised 250 miles of range, a basic interior, and a starting price of just $19,900, 0 cents, less than half the cost of an entry-level F-150 Lightning. The industry laughed at first, calling it a toy truck, but reservations poured in by the tens of thousands. The appeal wasn't just the price, it was the philosophy. These startups marketed themselves as the anti-establishment, the honest alternative to corporate greed. Their ads showed real farmers, real workers, and real dirt roads. They didn't talk about luxury, they talked about freedom from debt. And that message resonated with a generation that had grown tired of paying more for less. Even if the range or power couldn't match the big names, people were drawn to the authenticity. A survey by the fictional EV Horizons Group in mid-2025 found that 62% of consumers under 40 were open to buying an electric pickup within 2 years, mostly because of cost savings rather than environmental concerns. The big automakers scrambled to respond. GM quietly shelved its planned $90,000 0 cent electric Silverado variant and began designing a stripped-down model code-named Project Flint. Ford leaked internal plans for a bare-bones electric work truck priced under $35,000 0 cents, using recycled aluminum panels and simplified electronics. Ram partnered with a Chinese supplier to cut battery costs in half, but the shift came too late. The public had already associated the legacy brands with greed and overpricing, while the new players owned the narrative of honesty and affordability. Behind the scenes, panic spread. Dealerships that had once mocked EV startups now begged for smaller, cheaper models to sell. Analysts warned that the next great price war was imminent and that it would destroy profit margins across the entire industry. By late 2025, Ford and GM executives were meeting with government officials, seeking subsidies or tax breaks to offset the losses they knew were coming. The only way out, one anonymous insider said, is to sell trucks that make sense again, or watch the market collapse entirely. This new wave of competition didn't just threaten profits, it threatened the mythology that had defined the pickup for generations. For the first time, the idea that a truck had to be big, loud, and expensive was being challenged on a mass scale. Online reviewers praised the practicality of compact electric pickups. Fleet managers, once fiercely loyal to Ford or Chevy, began testing low-cost alternatives from startups because they couldn't ignore the economics. Even government agencies started pilot programs replacing gas-pounded work trucks with cheap electric units made in small factories in Nevada and Mexico. By the time 2026 loomed on the horizon, it was clear that the identity of the American pickup was being rewritten. What began as a crisis of price and production had become a cultural reckoning. The market was no longer about horsepower or chrome, it was about survival and realism. The truck that once symbolized pride and power now symbolized debt and denial. And as new, stripped-down electric models rolled onto the roads, quiet, efficient, and within reach, the old giants of Detroit faced an unthinkable future. a market where simplicity, not luxury, was king. The lesson was brutal but necessary. The customers hadn't disappeared, they'd simply run out of patience. They didn't stop loving trucks, they stopped believing in the people who sold them. And in that betrayal, the American pickup, the country's most enduring mechanical hero, was forced to start over